We are now in the epoch, the geologic epoch, in which human action dominates Earth's cycles. And that's particularly true with water, because water is essential for life.
I think we're realizing as a nation that water has become not just an environmental challenge, but a social and economic challenge. We're finding that we're competing for water.
As climate changes, as the distribution of water resources across the US and globally changes, it's going to force people to confront these ideas of how we've managed water in the past from a very command and control top-down perspective to ways of managing water that are more participatory, more inclusive.
The adaptive water governance pursuit brought together ecologists, human geographers, and legal scholars to grapple with the question of how we manage our water resources in the face of this accelerating change. In particular, we wanted to understand how our governance systems can adapt to this changing environment.
One of the first things we did is had everyone in the room kind of define what they thought adaptive governance or governance means. We figured that would be a half hour, we'd all agree and move on, and actually that took almost a full day for us to just hammer out what we mean by governance. So if you think of governance broadly, it's a lot of different institutions, public and private, that are working together in a network and kind of moving the system, whether that's the economy or a city.
One of the key qualities of adaptive governance is that it's a governance that's based on this idea of ecological resilience.
Resilience is one of these ideas that is become widely spread, widely applied.
Buzz Halling, back in the 70s, began understanding that ecosystems don't always change in a linear fashion. When faced with a disturbance, they do one of three things. They resist the disturbance and therefore maintain the status quo. They adapt so that they're still providing the same structure and function, but they may have changed a little bit internally, or they shift to another state.
A lot of the manifestations are a result of prior management. That is how we have manipulated these ecosystems that it increases their vulnerability or decreases their resilience to change into another state.
Resilience theory helped bring together the different disciplines in the room because it's a theory about how complex systems behave. The concept of adaptive capacity had meaning in each one of our disciplines, and adaptive capacity is very much an aspect of the resilience of a system. We could take that concept and translate it into law, translate it into management actions, and translate it into what's going on in the ecosystem. So it really allowed us to think about solutions and to think about how law would play a role.
We decided to look at case studies of large rivers across the United States so we could kind of backcast on all the decisions that have been made to manage water across those basins over time, and what we could learn from those decisions moving forward. What worked and what didn't work, what times of adaptation and times of maladaptiveness. And to put that together at a larger level, a larger synthesis of important factors to be more adaptive in the future.
Our initial resilience assessments were of 6 basins. The Platte River Basin, where major restoration efforts have really potentially expanded the room for adaptation, and that's really a basin reflecting the heartland of America. The Middle Rio Grande Basin, where climate change is already changing the character of the basin and causing problems for water supply. The Klamath River Basin, the site of recent conflict between Native American tribes, irrigators, and fish, where a lot of collaborative efforts have occurred. The Columbia River Basin of the Pacific Northwest, very large river basin developed for hydropower and flood control, with a number of Native American reservations and the iconic salmon runs. The Anacostia, which is a sub-basin that flows towards Washington, D.C., heavily developed, and the Everglades, which is more of a wetland and something you can define as a river basin, but will over time be ground zero for climate change because of seawater intrusion, but has gone through many cycles of attempted restoration.
What came out of these assessments was that there has been that all of these systems are in a sort of rigidity trap. And rigidity trap refers to systems in which lots of money has gone in to manage and control water in these complex systems. Of each of these 6 water systems around the U.S., there was a decline in environmental attributes, the environmental components, loss of biodiversity, loss in ecosystem goods and services, ecosystem functions, endangered species, a number of ways of assessing those decline in environmental values.
The Klamath Basin was a particularly interesting example because it's been the locus of direct conflict over water for over 100 years, but more poignantly in the last 2 decades, including an outbreak of protest over decisions to manage water in the year 2001, and then a changing legal system and many different management decisions. Learning about the basin together, so people that may have different worldviews about how the basin functions, but actually coming together and building a collaborative generation of knowledge about how the system functions was a really key point towards a more adaptive governance system. One of the major lessons that comes out of the Klamath that we could apply to other water basins includes not ignoring the social components of the system, not ignoring the legacy and the history of conflict and the history of different people's ways of understanding how the basin works and what everyone's role and place in the basin is.
One of the biggest challenges in governing changing systems is the fact that one of the major things we expect of our legal systems is stability. We want stability for economic development. We want to be able to make decisions and know with certainty how they're going to be handled by the legal system. And we want stability just to be able to live our lives free of conflict. That's something that law and government provide us. When we're talking about introducing flexibility into that system, we're talking about something that could be destabilizing. And that is one of the biggest challenges of the work that we're doing. Because consider another possibility. If the systems we rely on, the water systems, the ecological systems, are going to be changing in unpredictable ways, and we have rigid government, rigid laws that assume they won't, that will be destabilizing as well.
My sense is it will be a long time before we are confident we've developed that right balance between flexibility, stability. I think it's going to take a lot of work.
Both government and people have a role to play in adaptation. Building local capacity, whether you're in the United States or whether you're in a developing country, is a key aspect to making sure society can navigate climate change.